All right, a happy Monday media day for most of the teams that are not playing overseas. Media day. The beauty of media day is that everything is terrific. Everyone is in shape, except I guess if you're in Philadelphia and you have no James Harden, who has not reported. And we are going to do, I always say, a short video. This is hopefully going to be short. I want to just kind of go through the specifics of Harden not reporting, and what the ramifications are, and just from a more of a CBA type perspective here. I always joke about media day and then the start of training camp here, where everything is great in the world until you start practicing on that Tuesday morning. And I always go back to 2013, and I think I've said this a couple times on podcasts. That was the year right after Garnett and Pierce, Jason Terry. We go to Duke to have training camp. We scrimmaged that night. Our reserves, which consisted of Allen Anderson, Andre Bloch, Andre Kirilenko, Sean Livingston, really Jason Terry, really good group of reserves, dominated the starting unit here. And I remember calling my wife on the ride home and saying, we're all going to get fired based on what I just said. So the honeymoon for everyone, it will end when training camp begins on Tuesday. Of course, some teams are already dealing with injuries, but as what was reported on Monday, James Harden is a no-show for media day. We'll see what happens when training camp begins on Tuesday. The Sixers are going to Fort Collins, Colorado, which is an interesting spot. We've gone to when I was with New Jersey, my first year was at Kutztown State, and boy, was that eye-opening with Kenny Anderson and Derek Coleman. We've been to a lot of different places. Usually just do it to kind of get away. Team bonding, all those different fun things here. So a little bit about James Harden, who has not reported to Media Day in Philadelphia. Last year of his contract, we know he's not extension eligible. Asks to be traded back in late June. Interesting contract structure. He received 25% of his salary on July 1st, $8.91 million. He received 25% of his salary on October 1st, $8.9 million. Tim Bontemps in his article is reporting that Philadelphia has paid him. If you don't, the league will file. The Player Association will file a grievance. Back in 2 years ago, when they went through the Ben Simmons situation, Simmons had basically kind of tipped his hand as far as what was going to happen, and Philadelphia wound up holding back some of that advance, and then they went to grievance court and they settled it, and it became a real mess here. So for Harden, he's already been paid roughly half of his salary, $17.8 million. The remaining $17.8 million gets paid in 12 installments starting on November 1st. He's got a trade kicker in his contract. If Harden was traded before the start of the regular season, the Sixers would owe him $5.3 million. That number gets applied to that $35.6 million number for trade purposes. Of course, James Harden could always waive that. I don't think he would, considering that he considers that he's probably given up is playing at a discount in the contract that he is signed at. So that's how, from a contractual standpoint, he's already been paid 50% of it. The remaining 50% goes in 12 different installments. We have talked about withholding services as far as what happens if James Harden does not report. Certainly looking at the first day of practice that starts on Tuesday for the Sixers. If a player withholds services for more than 30 days and he is in the last year of his contract, the team has the right not to allow that player to become a free agent here. That is the withholding services. That is not new. That's been in every CBA that I've seen. It's not a new penalty because the player empowerment. It's been like that here. We just have never really seen it enforced. And certainly with Ben Simmons had 3 years on his contract 2 years ago. It's not a new rule. Certainly Philadelphia can hang that over James Harden's head, but here's the story. Philadelphia is looking to become a cap space team next offseason. We're seeing that why they have not extended Tyrese Maxey. They need James Harden's salary/cap hold off their books to have cap space next year. So they can say, you know what, James Harden, you're not going to be a free agent, but at the end of the day, he is still going to have a cap hold counting against their salary. They both need each other here. That's the withholding services. There is the failure to render services. I call this the Ben Simmons rule. If he misses exhibition, regular season game, the formula is 191.6 of his salary. So when you look at it, it's roughly $389,000 that James Harden would forfeit starting with the preseason if he is not there. Daryl Morey has already said that he will be, based on what the CBA allows, and as far as what he will be fined, he will get fined at. That's for missing regular season and missing games. You're asking the question now, well, what happens if it's more than what is left on his contract that they owe him? Now they will have to go out and claw back that money. What happens if he, at the end of the day, Harden sits out the whole year and is fined $30 million, but you've already paid him 18 of that? What happens? They will have to go back and claw back that money. It gets a little bit messy. Now, practices, I wouldn't really pay much attention for practices. First practice, $2,500. Second practice, $5,000. Third practice, $7,500. Fourth, missed practice during the season, reasonable under circumstances. I would say it would be $50,000. That's the most before he can file a grievance. Practices, I wouldn't get caught up. Basically, Philadelphia will be keeping a running tally. As far as missing media day, we can fall down under the mandatory programs, which is $20,000. Really all small pocket change. The big thing, of course, will be withholding services and failure to render service as far as how much James Harden is willing to sacrifice here. He could show up in Fort Collins, Colorado and say, I'm ready to go. He's not helping himself out in this situation by not reporting to Philadelphia. The best thing for Philadelphia and the best thing for James Harden is to be on the court and to play. Right now, he has limited trade value. That changes once we start playing games. Once we start playing regular season games, teams have injuries. Teams think they're closer to a championship level team. It changes dramatically compared to where you are in the offseason here. I understand it from Philly's perspective, not just to give him away for, let's say, multiple expiring contracts and a protected first, considering where you are with your roster. You basically have Joel Embiid, which is, certainly the big question. We'll focus on Philadelphia as far as the future of Embiid. And then Tyrese Maxey, who's a restricted free agent. You want some equity back, and you want to stay up there where Boston and Milwaukee and Miami and some of these other teams, because certainly without Harden on your roster, it is a step back. We're at 9 minutes. We're going to go for about another minute or two. Lastly, my big concern in Philadelphia is that this is 2 out of the last 3 years. You've had a player no-show media day. We'll wait and see what happens with Harden for training camp. Ben Simmons 2 years ago. James Harden today. You have a distraction to start training camp here. That is my concern as far as the climate in Philadelphia, as far as you have a franchise player in Joel Embiid, and you've had 2 distractions the past 2 out of the past 3 years. Instead of Nick Nurse's first training camp, and everything is supposed to be good. You have your team meeting Monday night, and everything is supposed to be positive. I mean, I'm even looking at Steve Clifford in Charlotte, who's extra positive about the commitment in there. But in Philadelphia, you have already started off on the wrong foot here. We will see what happens with Harden. We will monitor his situation. But as I said, it's a little bit easier to move him during the regular season if he's on the court to show his value. And there are teams out there that think they are championship-worthy teams. That's it on James Harden. Certainly we'll keep an eye on. Everyone have a great Monday.